to know that if you are looking for a church home, you'll get a plug in here. Many of you are from other churches, we know that. You have your own home churches. There is a visitor's slip on the inside of your bulletin. And if you would like somebody from this staff to visit you, just fill this out and drop it on the table before you leave today. Once again, it's a privilege to have every one of you here today.
Many of you sat under his worship leading throughout the years right here. In fact, the majority of us, in fact, in every way, Darrell's life was a witness to us, and we're here to give evidence to that. And we're going to have a time of personal sharing that you can give witness to that. We haven't lost him, by the way. We know exactly where he is. And in fact, the scripture tells us, even being dead, he yet speaks, because the Holy Spirit uses who he was and what he was to our lives throughout the days. And we can memorialize that in the rest of our lives, and we can become more than we would have otherwise been. So we're going to begin with public sharing. If we can't all do that, so the family has provided some little cards on your seat there. There's not one in your seat. I see there's some over here. Be sure that you give a note to the family and let them know how the Spirit of God impacted you because of Darrell, and what a lasting remembrance that will be.
This is a tribute written by his sister. My beloved brother Darrell, I have a pleasant childhood memory of my little brother singing a solo in church. This was your first occasion to sing in public, and you were only 2 years old. You stood on the piano bench beside our mom, who was playing for you, and you sang the chorus of He Lives at a little Nazarene church near Chicago. From that time on, God has used your voice for His glory. When I was training at Samaritan Hospital, School of Nursing, and Dad and Mom and you boys had moved to Boise, I remember our family was attending a revival service at one of the local churches. Someone had sent a note up to the pastor requesting that Darrell Kennedy sing for the service. The pastor, not knowing who Darrell Kennedy was, said, "Will Brother Kennedy please come forward and sing for us?" He looked a bit perplexed when this 10-year-old boy comes to the platform with his mother along to accompany him on the piano. God blessed as you beautifully sang the love of God. When you were only 17, and I was leaving for the mission field in East Africa and was to embark by ship from New York, Dad was not able to be away from his work, so it was a car trip to New York with Mom, you, and Ronnie, visiting churches for deputation work along the way. You very capably did most of the driving to the heart of the big city, to the ship, and back to Washington State. Thanks, Darrell, for all the wonderful memories. Especially sweet were the many Christmas celebrations spent with you and dear Naomi and your sweet kitties. It was precious to me that when my husband Jack came into my life, that he loved you so much and that you loved him as one of your own brothers. Through all the years, your singing has been such a blessing to my heart. Whether you were in song evangelism, singing with your beloved challengers, leading the singing at church, or just singing around the piano at our family gatherings, I will miss your voice. My heart leaps for joy at the thought of hearing you sing in heaven as we sit at Jesus' feet. Dad and Mom have been waiting for you. I can only imagine the joyful reunion when they met you beyond the gates. With much love and appreciation, Norma. And on behalf of my mom and sisters and all of our family, we want to thank you for sharing in this celebration of the life of my dad. He was a loving husband, father, son, uncle, grandpa, great-grandpa, nephew, cousin, and obviously a dear friend to many. He was most proud of his family. I think that's clear. He was a huge part of the heritage which lives on. He lived large. He did everything he wanted to do in life. And on Saturday night, he joined his dad and mom, and my grandpa and grandma Nat, and Uncle Dale, cousin Lori, little Aubrey Rose, in heaven. We were blessed to spend last week with him and really tell him everything that we wanted to say. We asked him to stay a while longer, but God was ready to call him home. As a family, we have spent every day together since, reminiscing, crying, and laughing together. My mom wanted this to be a celebration of Dad's life. So I want to invite, like Petey said, all of you who wish to share briefly a favorite memory that you have. Start to come. These 2 microphones here. Please don't be shy. He would want this. If you know him, you know that.
I had the privilege to be Darrell's pastor for 5 years. And Darrell was a man in full. He loved with all his heart, laughed with all his heart, cried with all his heart. Knelt at the altar with him and bawling our eyes out over one thing or another. He was on staff. And if I just say that you all knew Darrell and you think of a time in his life, my guess is that you will smile. We had a lot of those. On occasion, Darrell was conducting the communion service. I was behind him, and we all ate the little piece of unleavened bread. And he encouraged us to tip back the little jigger of grape juice, and he poured his down the wrong tube. So loud coughing and hacking ensued, sort of spoiling the moment. You know, you cannot remember Darrell without remembering him as fully involved in whatever was going on. If we had a work day, he was there. If it's a prayer meeting, he's there. If it's a choir practice or whatever, he was there. And we have the highest regard for his family. I conducted wedding ceremonies for most of his children. When I married Sandy and Dave, Darrell helpfully pointed out, after the service I'd left my fly down. But even back then, Dave was taller than me. So nobody saw, of course, but Darrell. My guess is that when Darrell arrived and was brought to the presence of God, God did what we all do when we think about Darrell. We smile.
In Portland, I went to a very conservative church, and the guitar music was of the devil, according to my dad. And but my mom was born in Wichita, Texas, and she was a good Southern Baptist. And so we started going to church around 72, 73. And my dad was a fireman, and so what that meant was that he would work a day, maybe off 2 days. And what it also meant was that every 3rd Saturday, Dad was at work and couldn't monitor Mom and I listen to the devil's music on Saturday night for Darrell Kennedy. So every 3rd Saturday night, my mom would, is it on? Is it on? Yeah, let's turn it on. So we'd turn on the music and we'd do I'll Fly Away, oh Lord. And so the first songs I learned on the guitar were I'll Fly Away and that type of thing. And so to this day, God's given me kids. My wife sings, and it may be weird, but we do dishes, and we sing 4-part harmony to I'll Fly Away. We do the devil's music while we do dishes, and it's all because of Darrell. So thank you, Greg.
And I said, I said to myself, if I could ever sing one time with that guy, I would fulfill one of my dreams. Little did I know that God would lead us to Camas, Nazarene. Darrell was there. He sang that morning, and I went up and told him what I had in my heart, that I wanted to sing one of these times with him. Little did I know that the Mead brothers would get us together as a quartet, and we called ourselves the Old Geezers. And it was a It was a wonderful time for me. I just want to thank Darrell and his family for being there when I really needed that. I needed to be uplifted. Darrell was one that can do that. So, bless you all. I'm glad to see you all here.
I've known Darrell since 1960, I guess, and Naomi and I were teenagers together back in Nampa, Idaho. So I've known the family for a long time. I just have a ton of stories about Darrell that I won't take the time to tell, but I laughed a whole lot around that guy, and I can still consider him one of my best friends. When I was, we were in Rock Island, Illinois together one time, and Darrell had a job selling shoes at a high-end department store there, and I was working in a factory and didn't like it, and so he got me a job in the same department store as him, and we spent a whole lot of time together just laughing and cutting up. And one time, if you've been around Darrell and have you ever ridden in a car with him, you never forget that. He had an old car, and we were headed home late one night after work, headed to, he was going to drop me off on his way home. And some guy decided he didn't like Darrell's driving in another car and decided to make a citizen's arrest, apparently. And because he kept running in front of us and cutting Darrell off, and Darrell would go around him and he'd come around again. And it was about a 5-mile race there with this other car, and we finally ditched him. But that's just one of the many times that I rode with Darrell that I won't forget. But one thing that I always appreciated about Darrell was my wife Joyce and I got married in Wichita Falls, Texas. And Darrell and Naomi were song evangelists in the West Indies, I believe, at that time, on their way home to Idaho. And I asked them to stop in Wichita Falls, Texas. That's not exactly on the way, but stop and sing for our wedding. And he and Naomi did that. I had no money to help with their expenses, and I don't think they had much being song evangelists, but I always appreciated the fact that Darrell and Naomi have been our friends. And I love them, I love their family, and just appreciate knowing Darrell always. I'll never forget, can't forget Darrell.
Many years. And the singer's galore, but Darrell Kennedy is the only one I interpreted for his singing voice that they asked me not to sign it. They don't hear the words, but they said, look at the glory in his face. It just shows out through it. I don't know what he's saying, but oh, the blessing of it, just to see him and hear his singing. And I've lived almost 93 years. I've never had a dearer friend in my life. He's so precious to me and our family.
I've always loved gospel music, and in a world where most Christian music is wonderful, but it's like top 40, to be able to walk in and sing the old hymns and know them word by word is something that I am thankful for in growing up. And I began attending Prayer Community Church when I was 19 years old, and I was going to George Fox College at the time, and I was one of the DJs on our college radio station, and it was all contemporary music, and I didn't like contemporary music. I kind of thought it wasn't very Christian-like. And so I asked them if I could do my own radio show, kind of like what Darrell Kennedy did with the Gospel Sing, and play the Cathedrals and the Nelons and the Happy Goodmans and the Challengers and the Gospel Sons. And all my college buddies kind of looked at me and laughed because they thought it was crazy. But I have to tell you something. Every time I walk in this building and want to sing, I'm so glad I'm a part of the family of God. And it's a heritage that my kids don't have. And I wish that they did. But, I got that from Darrell. And he was gracious enough to allow me to sing with him, and I'm forever grateful for that.
And raise your hand if you were a teenager at Prairie Church when Darrell was here doing his thing. Yes. Okay. So I just have to say, what a wonderful man, and not just because of his music and his pastoring and his advising me over the years when I worked at KPQ for a little while, and he was a good mentor. But the thing I remember the most is Darrell absolutely cracking up when we would poke fun at him in church skits. Because the first time we ever did this, we were pretty nervous because, you know, he's up there and he's got that serious look on his face, and we're like, I don't know how this is going to go over. And so we got up there and we came up with this idea that, I'm sure Mike Coonrod had something to do with this idea. Came up with this idea that we're gonna lip sync Ship Ahoy, and we're gonna go up there wearing life preservers, and we have oars, and we look out in the crowd, and I see Darrell Kennedy and Jack Fields laughing so uncontrollably that they are literally on the floor, hitting the ground, and there's tears coming down their cheeks. That meant so much to know that he was tickled by that and not offended. And so then, of course, that opened up the door and we did that kind of stuff over and over and over again. And he was always so gracious about it and so tickled and laughing and I mean, he was so tickled by it that the family even got us one of his own toupees to wear. Which I proudly wore and kept on with some duct tape.
Oh, Harvey Wienert had a garage sale. Look what I got for Darrell.
And so that, you know, of all the memories and all the influences, I think the thing I'll remember the most is just his smile and his laughter when we did those kind of things. So, love you, Darrell.
Not just Darrell, but Darrell and his wife. I mean, you couldn't watch one without the other. And it grabbed me, and it erased some of the scars of growing up in a hellfire and brimstone little church that always got associated with that old music. And it changed me. But Darrell's music and Naomi, your accompaniment changed my life. Wonderful gift back of the beauty of the gospel through gospel music. But the two things that really transform and stick with me, one of those is the way that Darrell came and embraced, at his age, incredible change. He not only became a part of Living Hope Church, he, like always, became a leader. He influenced, and all of us as people giving our time as pastors, our lives were made better to the glory of God. To see a person be willing to go through such change, and from a human standpoint, give up so much, but gain so much, that's very rare. It's very inspiring. The other thing I will never forget, and this touches me the deepest, was Darrell Kennedy is the only man who had a handshake and a look in his eye like my dad. And I'm a blessed man because I didn't choose my parents. My dad is my greatest hero here on earth. And just a few weeks ago, Darrell came in and he gripped my hand right there in the entryway. He looked me in the eyes. I remembered my father's grip, my father's eyes. I'm going to introduce those two men in heaven. And we'll together sing gospel music. Thank you. And thank you guys.
Good work.
As you mentioned, when I think about Darrell, I think about that look. And I got the look of, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And how are you going to fix that? So, a couple stories. And the history up on the video where we were referencing, or it was referencing Darrell's volunteer sheriff time. One evening, Greg let me take home his Datsun 240Z or whatever, and I didn't know that in the glove box was Darrell's gun. So I subsequently get pulled over for speeding on the way back to the Kennedy's house, and I'm searching into the glove box, and before I know it, there's a policeman pulling me out of the car, throwing me against the back of the trunk, thinking I'm going for the gun to shoot my way out of the ordeal. So, of course, Darrell gets called, and I get on the phone with Darrell, and he tells me to come home quickly. He is my other father, by the way. So I go to the Kennedy household, and I saw that look in his eye, and it was a look of, what are you doing? Go to your room. I'm like, I'm not your son. Go to your room. But what an amazing family. When I think about the Kennedys, I think about Darrell and Naomi. I think about the sisters. I think about Greg, one of my best friends. And just the influence that your family had on me, being literally part of my life. And many weekends and weeknights, I would go home to Naomi and go into the cupboard and pull out the Totino's pizza and the can of tuna and sit myself down and make myself at home. But what a tremendous blessing Darrell has been to me, to my family. And I just thank you for taking care of me and where that's led me to today. So thank you.